All right, moving right along. Now we get to have our program, which this has been in the process for at least a year, thinking about school boards because of the upcoming
Recording stopped.
Because of the upcoming school board candidate forums and our ballots in November. So let's start with okay, the maintenance on Zoom. Keep yourself muted if you have your phone by you. In the upper right-hand corner of your screen is an icon for view. So select speaker view.
Recording in progress.
So we'll take questions at the end of the presentation and use the raise hand function on Zoom, or you can put your questions in chat. So with that, let's introduce our panel. Our program today is on the roles and responsibilities of school directors. Marissa Rathbone is Director of Strategic Advocacy with the Washington State School Directors Association. Marissa served with 1,477 locally elected school directors for over 4 years as the government relations lead. And prior to this, she dedicated 20 plus years to public education and public service. And there's Tricia Laubach, Director of Leadership Development for Washington State School Directors Association. Tricia oversees the training, resources, and support to all school directors and board superintendent teams in Washington State. She brings 18 years of experience serving on her local school board to the work. Joel Ani, Executive Director of the Washington Association of School Administrators. Joel served as superintendent for 20 years before being named Executive Director of WASA in 2018. Rosa Torres, School Director, Pasco School District. Rosa Torres is honored to serve as the Pasco School Board at-large position since being appointed this past spring. She is now a passionate advocate for the district where she received her K-12 education and understands firsthand the transformative power of education and how it can empower students throughout their lives. Nikki Lockwood, School Director, Spokane School District. Nikki is in her 4th year serving as a 6-year term and currently serves as the Vice President of the board. Her organizing work and passion around educational equity energized her to run for this position. And we have Michelle Whitney, Superintendent, Pasco School District. Michelle has served as superintendent in Pasco since 2016. In 2022 to 23, she was elected to serve as the Washington Association of School Administrators president. And Adam Swinard, Superintendent, Spokane School District. Serving as superintendent for the last 3 years, Adam was named Washington State Superintendent of the Year in 2023. Welcome all. Thank you for taking the time to enlighten us on this program. Okay, so let's start with Marissa.
Thank you so much.
Where's your screen share?
Great. Thank you so much. On behalf of this group of committed and passionate public education leaders, I just want to thank the League of Women Voters of Mason County for this invitation. We are excited to present some information to you and also be responsive to questions. We come from various different lenses within this system and hope that we're able to provide you with some good ideas about how school board and superintendent teams provide leadership and support to benefit student outcomes within our state. So I get the opportunity to kick us off, and I'm going to briefly just share a little bit about the Washington State School Directors Association, as it is the state agency that supports all 1,477 locally elected school board members. I'm going to spend about 5 minutes just going over some resources that are available on our website so that if you want to dig in a little bit deeper following this presentation, you'll know how to get there. And then I'm going to turn to my colleague and mentor, Tricia Lubach, who is the Leadership Development Director, and she's going to dig in a little bit more to the roles and responsibilities of school directors. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and point you to some frequently asked questions on our webpage. Can I get a thumbs up from someone that you can see the WASDA website there? Great, thank you.
Yes.
Wonderful. So this is our public-facing website, accessible to anyone. There is a lot of information on here. I'm just going to skim the surface of it, but would encourage you and in communication with your fellow community members, be sure to point people to this resource when you have questions about school directors as well as the agency that supports them. There's a lot of information on here that helps demystify a little bit about what we do as well as what school directors do. So just want to remind you, in case you didn't know, that WASDA, lots of acronyms in the education space. We call ourselves WASDA. We exist as statute. So we are codified in statute to exist as a state agency. And our responsibility is to support and serve all the locally elected school board members in the state of Washington. There's a reference here to the RCW, but I'll save you all the review of statutory language. But if you're a policy nerd, go ahead and dig into it yourself. So who are we? We are nonpartisan. That's critically important because we represent all of the school directors from throughout the state who also in running for school board are nonpartisan. But as you know, politics play a big role in all the sectors of our state, and education is no exception there. So we often see partisan politics come through the work of school boards, but all elected officials in that capacity are nonpartisan, and so are we. Every school board member, by nature of winning their election, is a member of WASDA, and they have the opportunity to participate in all of our events, as well as access all of our resources. We do have some school board members who are more active within the organization of WASDA by serving on committees or on the WASDA board. They are recognized and elected into those roles by fellow school board members within their director areas. So we're organized similarly to educational service districts throughout the state by 11 director area regions. We have about 16 staff that work here full time. We are in a building that sits in Lacey, Washington, right by the Northeastern School District. But like I said, we do serve all of our school board members regardless of where they sit in our state. A little bit about our mission, vision, goals. It's inherent in what I've said before, is that we are here specifically to support and serve the locally elected school board members. There are some additional resources here that might be helpful if you're interested in learning more. You're always welcome to ask us questions. We have what are called member adopted positions, and WASDA staff, in representing and supporting our membership, adheres to the positions as developed and adopted by our membership. And when I say positions, they are statements about our core values and beliefs, as well as our legislative priorities and positions as we approach the legislative session and advocacy year-round at both the state and federal levels, as well as locally. So WASDA staff specifically adheres to the positions as adopted by our collective membership by majority, and interact with legislators based on those member adopted positions. We get a lot of questions about whether or not WASDA has any citizen oversight of WASDA. The answer to that is yes, because we are representative of a body of locally elected officials, and citizens of their community elect those officials. Inherently in that system, we have citizen oversight is inherent in that system. What do? We provide three really core foundational elements of support for our membership. Tricia is responsible for leading the leadership development or professional development opportunities for our members. I am responsible for advocating on behalf of our members and helping our members develop advocacy skills and connect with their legislators so that they can advocate according to their local and state priorities. And then a third colleague of ours, Abigail Westbrook, is the Director of Policy and Legal Services. One of the primary responsibilities there is to develop the model policies that school districts often adopt as part of their policy and procedure. We do have no regulatory authority. So often we get questions about, can you make a school board member do that? Or can you call somebody out on something that they did that we don't like? And the answer to that is actually no. WASDA has no regulatory authority over school directors. The regulatory authority of school directors are the individuals that vote them in or out of office. So we consider ourselves more of a coach than a referee, a carrot than a stick approach to how we support and serve our membership, always aiming to get as many of our members involved in the proactive work that we do. Why do we advocate at the state legislature? Again, like I said, there are member adopted positions that guide how we advocate on our members' behalf. However, one of my primary roles is to help our members navigate the legislative process. I like to consider myself a concierge to the legislative process by helping our members figure out how to schedule meetings, have talking points prepared, and follow up with their legislators to be most effective in moving our priorities forward. We have a year-long process with key points during various points throughout the year where our members bring forward position proposals. And actually just this coming week, Friday and Saturday, they have an annual General Assembly, during which time they bring forward, debate on, possibly amend, and vote on positions that guide our annual advocacy platform. We do not require any sort of training for our members. However, there are some required trainings that have been legislated that we help to support and offer to our membership. And then there are two sections here about what this was developed in response to what's WASDA's position on vaccines and face masks. As you know, there's been over the last several years quite a bit of interest in finding out where school board members are on those issues, as well as a host of other issues. I would just remind you that I've said multiple times before, our positions are based on member adopted positions. At present, we have no member adopted positions on vaccines, much less on the wearing of face masks. So the expectation there is that our members follow their oath of office and the laws that they have committed to as a part of that role, elected role and responsibility. So that's a lot of information. It probably brought up some more questions for you. We'll be able to answer some more in a little bit, but in the interest of time, I'm going to pass to Tricia, who's going to dig into the roles and responsibilities of school directors specifically. Tricia.
Great. Thanks so much, Marissa. And thank you to the League of Women Voters for having us here today. We're excited to share with you and also hear the questions that you have. So I'm going to just quickly pop over to a PowerPoint I have here and talk a little bit about what school boards do. It is a mystery to a lot of people what school boards do, including those sometimes who've been recently elected. And I can say that with some confidence, both as the person who trains the board statewide, as well as my own experience of joining a board and then being surprised about, I thought this job was a little different than what it is. So I have a lot of empathy for people who come to the work with hearts of wanting to do good and then trying to navigate that direction. So I'm going to share with you just a couple of things here so you have some understanding of what boards do and also importantly what boards don't do, because that is a critical element as well. I would say to start with, just in general, boards have the ability to create conditions for student and staff success. And my personal and professional belief is that that's their highest duty. They are there to enable students to be successful, both academically as well as in other ways. All of us who are parents or grandparents or love kids understand that there are a lot of different ways for students to be successful, and not all of them are academic. The other role of a board is to evaluate and oversee the superintendent. The superintendent is the school board's only employee. They hire, support, and evaluate that superintendent in rare opportunity, or excuse me, in rare circumstances. They may find the need to part ways with superintendents, but I believe that it's the role of school boards as leaders in their district to work with superintendents who have some unique responsibilities and also unique expertise that most lay people who serve on school boards don't have. That team can find some real synergy when they combine the community aspect that boards bring to it, as well as the expertise of superintendents. Boards often oversee the setting or the engagement in setting district strategic goals. Boards really operate at a strategic level. They don't get down into the details, or some might say into the weeds of the managing of a school district. But they do set the overall tones, in terms of our overall district strategic goals. What are those? They help articulate those, and then the superintendent and the superintendent's team figure out how to help those come to fruition. Boards also are responsible for setting district policy. The policies are really the laws of the school district. And in fact, most of those policies are directly related to law that is set at the legislative level, RCWs and WACs. Those are frequently not subject to a lot of change or adjustment by school boards. Some of them are, but many of them have their basis in law. That district policy, again, is the law, whereas procedures are more how those district policies are going to be carried out throughout the district. I'll touch on that again in a minute here. And then the other thing that boards do is their responsibility is really to represent the entire community. And one of the mistakes I see boards making is not recognizing that part of that community, an extremely important part of that community, is students. School boards are there to represent students. Students often, for the most part, cannot vote, except for those who have turned 18. And I firmly believe that is a moral imperative for school boards to be ensuring that they are representing and listening to their students. And finally, school boards approve curriculum. And that does not mean that they spend a tremendous amount of time reviewing curriculum from all across the different opportunities. But in general, the way this happens is that there are curriculum committees that are put in place in school districts that review it. There are always people who have expertise in that area, staff members in a certain in a certain category of learning, say social studies or reading. And generally the superintendent will ensure that the curriculum that is being recommended to the board follows the standards that are set by the state. So let's look for a minute at what school boards don't do, because this is one that can oftentimes be confusing, and it's a very important element. One of them is that school boards should not be advancing personal agendas or those that are not related to student success. And I said school boards, but really what we're talking about here is individual school board members or school directors. I have over time, both on my own board as well as boards across the state, seen school board members come to their role with a very narrow personal agenda, or maybe it's not even personal, maybe it's specific to the school district, but might not be directly related to student success. I would say the majority of those folks over time really understand and embrace what their role is, but it's a very important element to consider that really the boards need to be focused on student success. This one is also confusing to the public, and I can understand why, but school boards do not evaluate, direct, or terminate staff. So if your child is struggling with their math teacher in middle school, your best option is not to call your local school board member and complain about that or try to ask them to solve that solution. That is truly not the board's job. And in fact, they would be getting down into those weeds, so to speak, to do that. That would be something that overall the teacher would be someone to contact. If that doesn't work, you go to the principal and then to the superintendent. But those staff roles are areas where the board should not be involving themselves. Again, similarly, boards don't oversee what and how teachers teach or how coaches coach. I have, during my time as a school board member, gotten a lot of calls about coaches. And that is, while coaching is important and it's very visible to your communities, it is not the role of the school board to oversee that. Once again, that's going to be the superintendent. As a school board member, I will always listen, and I will always help direct that person to someone who can assist them with their concern more appropriately. And then I mentioned that school boards set policies, the rules and laws that oversee their districts. The staff actually comes out and then figures out, how do we enact that? Some policies are pretty simple, but others are very complicated and require a significant amount of procedural work. For example, I'll just say policies related to special education, for example. Those require a lot of specialized knowledge for folks who are involved in that within the district, staff members, directors, the superintendent. They figure out those policies to figure out how to enact that policy. It's kind of it's a good rule of thumb to think about. The board does the what, and the superintendent does the how in many cases. And then finally, I mentioned that boards really should be representing the entire community, including students. Representing one constituency was not the vision of school boards. And Marissa mentioned the politicization of school boards. That's one danger of politicizing school boards and the work that they do. Really, it is their goal to look at the community overall and the students and represent them. So that's an overview on what the work of the board is. I have just one more piece I'm going to share with you. I was asked to share a little bit about the different types of governance structures that boards might undertake. And so this is a lot of things on this slide. I'm going to walk you through them quickly, just to give you kind of an understanding of what these look like. Some of you may have heard of the term policy governance. That is a governance structure that a board can use. It is used by, I would say, probably somewhere between a fifth to a sixth of school boards within the state of Washington. So I'm just going to quickly walk through what some of those differences might look like. In a traditional governance board, you're going to see them really focusing a lot on articulating goals through that strategic plan. And then they exercise oversight by monitoring district progress. So you'll see a lot of reports to the board in a traditional governance structure where they're taking in that information and analyzing whether the district is making progress towards those goals. It's not too dissimilar to what happens in a policy governance board, except that the board really articulates what the results are. So they are not focused on overall on the process for getting there, really leave that process to the work of the superintendent, but they are quite focused on the results. So that follows down into, how does the board monitor that work? Again, the traditional governance is monitoring progress, whereas a policy governance board is really looking at establishing what's called executive limitations, as well as the ends and the means. So the ends are, this is what we want our district, our superintendent to accomplish, and the means are how those ends will be accomplished, how they'll be done. So again, it's really policy governance is more of kind of a higher level results-oriented type of governance, whereas traditional governance combines both the governance role as well as some high-level management skills. Policies and procedures look a little bit different in a traditional governance role. You'll the 0 series. It used to be the 1000 series to the 9000 series of policies. A lot of boards now have that 0 series that includes some policies around how the board interacts with each other and with the community. And then within a balanced governance, they have just a different set of structures that focus on ends and means. So between those two types of governance structures, you have some blended models called complementary governance or coherent or balanced governance. You can see all of those have that little R behind them, which means that somebody has trademarked those. But overall, they still have the same goal, which is success for students and creating successful conditions for staff and students, as well as representing the communities. So I think that I have come to the end of my time. So I am going to stop sharing. And I think Joel, you are on now.
Thank you, Tricia. And echoing both Marissa and Tricia, thanks to the Mason County League of Women Voters for inviting us to be part of this this convening. As mentioned earlier, I've was a school superintendent for 20 years in Colfax, and then the last 13 in Snoqualmie Valley here in East King County. And then in 2018, about a little over 5 years ago, I had the honor of being selected to serve as executive director here at WASA. In part of our pre-planning for today's session, Tricia let me know that once she kind of finished up, Joel, feel free to jump in and add any perspective that you have on the superintendent board relationship. And Tricia, I have nothing to add. You just did a beautiful job of framing kind of the roles, responsibilities of the superintendent and the board. And I know panel here a little bit later go a little bit deeper there, but Tricia did a beautiful job. And not only is she, obviously with WASDA, but she has boots on the ground experience as a successful, highly respected school board member in the Quincy School District. And so she speaks the truth and did that very well today. So thank you, Tricia. Just a couple of things I would add, pretty basic, but I think important. In my career as a superintendent, and now looking at the system from a little bit of a different view, I think that it's important. High functioning school board superintendent teams. We're going to get into that here in a little bit with the panel, but to simplify, I think as a superintendent, I always tried to look for opportunities to set the school board up for success. As a superintendent, you want your school board that you're working with to look sharp and competent. And so as a superintendent, we're thinking about how do we set the stage? How do we help contribute to the success of the school board members individually and collectively? And on the other side, I think school boards that view part of their role as what are we doing individually and collectively to help the superintendent to be successful in his or her work in leading and in leading the work, all with a focus on the best interest of the students. So Tricia, that's about all I have to add in terms of roles and responsibilities. As we shift forward a little bit, I do want to also mention this partnership between the superintendent and the board, and the partnership between the board and the superintendent. WASA and WASDA, we'd like to think that we model that partnership. As well as the two major associations, WASA comprised of superintendents, and obviously WASDA of school board members across the state. And so we work very closely with WASDA on a variety of fronts. Some of those are visible, in terms of some conferences that we co-host. But I have to tell you, about 90% of our work is really behind the scenes as we're working together. And so be assured that there's frequent and consistent communication between the associations. And again, I'd like to think that we view our roles similarly, in that we are here to help you serve, support, and help superintendents and school boards to be successful, to help serve and support superintendents and school boards to, as I say, hit home runs for kids. And Tim Garshow and the team over at WASDA, including Marissa and Tricia today, are really great to work with. They're great partners. I'm going to shift just a few minutes and talk with you a little bit about WASA. Marissa shared with you some of the details and information about WASDA. And here at WASA, I was struck, Marissa, as you were talking about WASDA and what you all do and what you don't do. And we are very similar in that regard. We have no authority here at WASA. We really stand ready to serve and support the members of the association, and at times provide some leadership and some vision and maybe a nudge now and then. But our primary role is to serve and support the WASA membership. Our logo is telling in terms of what we're about. We here at WASA, the board, in April of 2022, about a year and a half ago, the board adopted an educational equity statement that is strong and clear and powerful. And the board adopted it in April, and a couple of months later, Michelle Whitney, who's on the panel today, transitioned into the presidency at WASA, and her focus during her year as president was to really encourage the executive team at WASA to put those words into action. And so if you look at our work, if you look at our stuff, so to speak, here at WASA, I think you'll see a lot of evidence that supports our commitment to the advancement of educational equity. As an association, we believe that that really is the core work of the superintendent. And with all due respect, the core work of school directors is to advance educational equity. Who are we? We not only represent superintendents, but we also have a number of kind of central office type administrators that are WASA members. We are 1,600 members strong. Again, about 300 of them are superintendents. The other 1,300, we have a few principals, about 50 to 60 principals that belong to WASA. And then we have assistants and business managers and special education directors. Many of the school district leadership out in the field belong to the association. We are the go-to association for superintendents. I believe that with the exception of maybe 2 or 3 superintendents in this state, the rest of them all belong to WASA. This is our mission, and I'm just going to keep it up on the screen for a minute while I speak to it. I'm certainly not going to read it to you, but we are about leadership here at WASA in terms of our work to help support, develop the development of leadership capacity among superintendents and, again, other school district leaders. As you can see, in our mission statement, we again are calling out this idea that we are committed to leadership, especially when it comes to advancing educational equity and excellence in learning for all students. We really play 3 roles here at WASA. We provide what we call member services. And so we stand ready to provide counsel or perspective or advice, or sometimes just a listening ear to our 1,600 members. WASA is the 911 line, so to speak, on those occasions when a WASA member, again, a superintendent, district office administrator, runs into a thorny situation. More often than not, they pick up the phone and call WASA to get some perspective. And we certainly don't have all the answers here. But when we don't have the answer, I think we do a pretty good job of getting our member connected with the resource that he or she needs to work through whatever issue may be before them. We also are heavily involved in providing professional development opportunities for our members. And a big part of our work, we have a number of conferences, a number of academies, a number of kind of 1 hour, one-off webinars on hot topics. And we've really built this and expanded our work in professional learning in the past few years here at WASA. We offer support for early career superintendents is a good example of, and it's a year-long academy for early career superintendents. We have a fairly strong mentor framework. So all of our early career superintendents have mentors. I mention this to those of you, most of whom in the audience today are board members or considering the board. I would encourage you to support your superintendent in his or her interest to engage in professional learning, professional growth opportunities. And then the last area of focus for WASA is legislative advocacy. Like WASDA, we are a strong voice in Olympia, advocating on behalf of our members, but most importantly, on behalf of the students that our members serve. So member services, kind of day-to-day support, professional learning, professional growth opportunities, building leadership capacity, and then our work in legislative advocacy. Last slide I was going to share are kind of our 3 overarching strategic priorities that we have approved by the board for 2023-24. This will give you a sense of our focus, and also, if you look closely, I think you can see a strong thread of educational equity throughout. Along the lines of what Tricia shared with the school board superintendent relationship, WASA has a similar structure here where as executive director, kind of the superintendent of WASA, I work with an elected board of directors. And the board of directors, in conversation with me and my team, they ultimately set the 3 big goals for 2023-24. So again, as Tricia described, the WASA board sets that overarching high-level goals and vision. And once those are set, then they turn it over to the executive director and my team to put together the how. So the board, again, here is an example of setting the what, that vision. And then the executive team here at WASA, we determine how we're going to get after these 3 goals. So the leadership goal, as you can see, if you've had a chance to look at it, somewhat focuses on the professional learning work that we do and the support that we provide to grow leaders and help build capacity, as I say, to help them to hit home runs in their communities for the students they serve. The second goal, which is within the concept of what we call trust, again, focuses on advancing that sense of belonging, that sense of equity in our schools and in our systems, all aimed at aiming for, aspiring for excellence. And then goal 3 is the advocacy goal. We work individually as an association on behalf of our 1,600 members. But again, when it comes to collaboration, we are in consistent and frequent contact with WASDA, the State Principals Association, as we think about our legislative priorities for, in this case, the upcoming session. We each represent our own respective members. but we really look for common ground in terms of what we can find opportunities to collaborate and speak with one voice. So as WASDA begins to shape their legislative priorities for the 2024 session, I suspect that I hope you'll see some alignment between WASA and WASDA, because we're really all about the same ends, which is the 1.1 students that attend public schools here in the state of Washington. So a little bit about WASA, including the focus of our work as we look forward and step into the 2023-24 school year. And with that, I will turn it back to our facilitator for today. Thanks for the opportunity to be here.
Thanks, Joel. I think it's my turn actually as part of the facilitation group to turn now to a panel discussion. Tricia and Joel and I put our heads together to identify some exceptional superintendent and school board member teams to serve as a model for how you might think about what does a great team look like at the superintendent and school board level in order to achieve the greatest benefit for student outcomes. So we've got a great state with a lot of really wonderful leaders in this regard, and Michelle Whitney and Rosa Torres from Pasco, Adam Swinyard and Nikki Torres Lockwood from Spokane are also some of our greatest and most involved members in this regard as well. So we're really honored to be able to share this space with them. Joel and I have put together a few questions that our panel members have already had a chance to consider. So hopefully we'll be able to provide you some insightful response. Tricia also may interject some additional context as we go through the questions, and this will be the remainder of our time together before we do Q&A. So Joel, if you don't mind, we just pony back and forth. I'll take the first question and then you can jump in with the second. And I guess I would start, let's start with Michelle and Rosa with what are the best parts about being a school director and superintendent, and perhaps pairing that with the second question pretty easily. What are some of the challenges? What's happening in your world that makes it great and makes it difficult all at the same time? Michelle, you want to get us started?
Sure. So I am the superintendent in Pasco, not by accident. Well, the superintendent part was an accident, but being in Pasco was not. So I come from a very complicated family system. Kids who come from systems like mine don't end up the CEO of multi-million or organizations with multi-million-dollar budgets. Instead, the world provides a narrative for us that is the opposite of success. And so it was public school that was the great equalizer for me. It was the gift of strangers who invested in a little girl who couldn't read very well till she was in grade 4, didn't do math very well till I was in college. Don't worry, budgets are just plus and minus. Like, I got that down. Don't you worry. But really, my life circumstances put me in a position to have to depend on people outside of my family system if I wanted to break the cycle of circumstance I came from. My grandfather was also the chief of police in Pasco. My great grandmother was the nurse to Our Lady of Lourdes here, our local hospital. And so as I tried to untangle the complexity of my upbringing and what I wanted to do for a career, I wanted to give back to the community of Pasco. And it was our local community college that helped me understand that I wanted to do that through being a teacher. So I landed in a teaching position in Pasco. And I tell you that to say this: the best part of my job has always been, whether it was a kindergarten teacher, a middle school principal, school counselor, an HR director, or now a superintendent, has been to invest back into a community that invested in me. So I live my purpose every day from this chair as a way to say thank you for everyone who went above and beyond for me and have made a promise and a pledge that I would do that for others. So that's what makes my job great. Now, on the flip side of that, there are challenges that face every community, and those challenges, I think, got more complicated over the course of the last 3 or 4 years. But when you love what you do and you love the place you do it, those challenges don't feel like barriers. They just feel like another kind of, hurdle to step over, and you have an inner confidence in knowing that it's possible. So, and I'm proud and honored to do that work with Rosa. So Rosa.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us today. Yeah, my name is Rosa Torres, and I am serving on the board in Pasco, Washington, where I grew up. So that's one of the things I think that makes this one of the best things I've done in a long time. I get to serve the community and the district that basically, gave me the key to my future as a child. I went through the public school system from K through 12 here in Pasco, and it really changed my life. I was able to go to college. I got my master's, and that preparation and like how Michelle spoke about, there were people in the district that believed in me and changed my life for the better. I came from an immigrant family, so my parents were always very focused on education, but they just didn't know the system. They wanted me to go to college, but they didn't know how that was going to happen. And so, my counselors, my teachers that I had all through my school, like saw something in me, helped help my family. And so I am in debt to them. And so, for me, one of the best things about this is being able to kind of pay that back and be of service in any way that I can. And so that's been kind of one of the things that I enjoy, is that I've been able to use like my education and my professional background to help our board, be more financially savvy, to understand things a little bit better, and also increase the transparency, to our community about how we spend funds, how we're investing in our kids, day in, day out. And so that's, I think, one of the best parts of it. And, of course, it's like challenging and rewarding all at the same time, right? And some of the challenges that I think we have in our community in particular is making sure that we stay focused on what's important and staying focused on the education of our kids and what's best for all of our children, to learn in the best way that they can, and to set them up for, a lifetime of success, whether that is going to college or, choosing a different occupation or a vocation. That's our job, is to support all our kids and our families. And so sometimes that gets lost, I think, with some of the other, issues that come up around, community and what people think our schools do and don't do. And so that's been a challenge, but we're doing the best we can here in Pasco. We've been lucky that our board is very solid, very moderate, and that we work well together in order to keep that focus on our kids. Even though we're a relatively new board, we've learned to come together quickly. And so I think that's maybe one of the other, challenges that we have is to maintain a good board that works well together, that is focused on the right things. And we've been able to have a really good partnership, not only with Michelle, our superintendent, but also, her extended staff, who are always really great and helping us learn and helping us make sure that we have the information that we need to make the good decisions for our kids. So yeah, I would sum it up with that.
Thank you both, Michelle and Rosa, for those thoughtful responses. I'll turn to Adam and Nikki to respond to the same question. Greatest parts, most challenging parts of your roles with K-12.
Yeah, well, it's an honor to join everybody today and be part of the conversation, and some pretty similar themes. The best part about being a superintendent is I just believe so deeply in who we aspire to be as a people. And I believe in the dream of education, and it's a dream that's been around for over 200 years, and we've not fully realized it. And it's a dream that says no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, no matter what background you have, there's hope for you to have a bright and successful future. And I just believe so deeply in that dream and being part of championing it forward. And there's lots of successes. There's so much to be proud of in public education in our country and in our state. And there's some really big and challenging work yet to do. And the best part of my job is to be in our schools and amongst our families and our kids, and to hear the stories about the power of relationships and the power that can happen in one relationship. And I always, ponder how we spend millions of dollars searching for one lost person in the wilderness, because we believe that every life matters and every person deserves an opportunity. And I think we reflect that every day in our schools as we seek to create a sense of belonging and connection for students. And our school board and myself, we had the honor of interviewing student advisors to our school board recently. And one of the young ladies that interviewed talked about being homeless and being an unaccompanied minor, having to navigate significant trauma and really struggling in the first years of high school, and then making one connection with a mentor inside of our schools. And that one connection and that one relationship empowered her and encouraged her to pursue success and take advantage of the opportunities that are available inside of our school. So there's nothing better than hearing those stories and being inspired by them. And I think the challenge is just continuing to understand how to create a sense of community and a sense of connection inside of our schools for every kid and every family member, so that they truly feel like the school district belongs to them and it's their space, and they have voice and they have ownership and they have power in those spaces. We have parts of our community that have always felt that way. And then we have parts of our community that have never felt that way. And in Spokane Public Schools, we're just desperate to seek out what it looks like to do a better job in creating spaces for our kids. And the world has changed a lot. There's some challenges that have been persisting for decades upon decades, but we're also facing some new barriers. The amount of time that kids are spending on personal devices and on social media, and the way in which the pandemic really deteriorated faster than we ever could have imagined norms and routines around socializing and interpersonal skills. We've never had an adversary quite like technology, where it's so engaging and it's so addictive for our kids, and the amount of time that they're spending on those devices versus being in community with each other in person, in activities and athletics, and being involved in their community. So that's some of the really big work is how to get at some of those persistent challenges, but also we've got a new adversary in technology, despite all the advantages that it can bring in creating access and opportunity for kids. It's a new adversary that we're trying to understand how to navigate.
Thank you for having me. I've appreciated hearing what everybody had to say. So I might be a little more brief because a lot of really good, I agree with everything that's been said. For me, I was a community organizer around education equity before I became a school board member. And so I built a lot of relationships in our community, and I've lived in Spokane for 53 of my 55 years. And so I just have a lot of diverse community connections, a lot of relationships. And so one of the best parts for me is to be able to use my power as a school board member to act on my values and some of those collective values that I have learned and shared from other community groups or community members. My daughter has a disability, and so I am a parent of a student with disability and had special education needs, and I really connected with a lot of community around that. And so that's one area specifically where I bring that perspective and that lens. And all of our school board has a really different backgrounds, different vocations, and so having such a diverse school board, I feel like we collectively really represent our community And so that really helps us serve our students really well. And then I would say, as far as some of the challenges, I think public school sometimes feels like it's under attack, just broadly. And so that is hard. That's hard for school board members, superintendents, the staff to hear that. It is hard on the system. And then some of the other challenges, I think, we're always we what comes into our schools are a reflection of what is in the community. And so there is poverty in our community, there's trauma in our community, and that was exacerbated with the pandemic, but those things were there. And so we are always trying to address those. And public school is a place where students come and there is warmth, there's food, there's people that care about them, there's safety. It is one of the safest places to be, is at school. And so we are a big, what I consider, anti-poverty measure. And so I think all the challenges around that are just, the day-to-day work that our staff try to address.
Nikki, I appreciate, public education is far from perfect, but we have a lot of good things going, and I really appreciate your perspective, and I can feel the passion of your commitment to public education. And I make mention of that because I think as superintendents and school board members, part of our role is to be champions for public education. If not us, then who would be the question, right? So from the four of you on those first couple of questions, I want to go a little bit narrower on the kind of student outcomes. And what the four of you did really well, that's inspiring to me, is that you all exude these values, these deep core values, this vision, this passion, this commitment to the work, to public education, to the students in your schools. And that's the beginnings of leadership, right? Out there, out front, being a champion. Can you be a little more, go a little bit deeper on how you believe, as a board member or superintendent, you are helping to improve student outcomes? And I think let's start with the two board members. Nikki, maybe you can start, and then to Rosa, and then we'll have the two superintendents wrap up on this question.
I on the Zoom. My daughter's peeking in, sorry. That's life. All right, so what are we doing to improve student outcomes? Well, I would say, I mentioned our diverse board, and I think that's really important. We bring in those different perspectives, and we have, proudly embraced, the diversity of our community and trying to meet those needs, really trying to center equity in looking at how we support students. And then, of course, we've done a lot of work on inclusion and trying to make sure that our students feel connected and welcomed and part of the full community. I would also say that for our recent strategic plan was during the pandemic, and we thought we were going to have a real small one, but we ended up having a grant, and we used it for our strategic plan to really make a big table and have a lot of community engagement. And so we collaborated with the community. We, as a board, had some values, and that was reflected in what the community also shared. And our guiding principles of equity, being student-centered, inclusion again, innovation, and trust and collaboration came out from that process. And so I don't know if that's specific enough, or if I need another prompt to give you more details.
Rosa?
Yeah. Thanks, Nikki, for that. I think we can echo a lot of the same things in our district. I think in particular, our board because we are relatively new, I think we've brought a lot of good new ideas, to our staff and to Superintendent Whitney, and and it's been received. And so I think that we've been really I guess, successful in building a good collaboration together to make sure that we are focusing on our student outcomes, right? And that we're not, falling into a pitfall of having just short-term goals. We're looking at the big picture. We make sure that, as we look forward, we're having a strategic vision of what we want our students to be successful at. I think we could easily fall into a trap of, for example, in our dual language programs of, emphasizing that our students only achieve success in English. We're looking at their broader, success as students and as graduates once they come out of high school, that they are fully bilingual, or that that they can learn in both languages so that they are successful. And so those are some of the things I think that we've done, together. One of the things that I think we're really proud of as a board is, our strategic vision and our strategic goals for this year. We're very collaborative. We focused in on what we really think are important for our district to achieve. And they're all focused around, the success of our kids. And I think one of the last things, which is I think hard to quantify, for, other than to say, that it's a feeling that we get, right, is I think what we've done over the last few years to, focus not only on like scores and all of that kind of stuff, is, that our kids feel welcomed, that they belong in our school system, that they don't need to, feel like they're being left behind, that people care about them, and that people really want to see them do well. And so, I think that has really made a difference for our students across the district. And I just have like anecdotal, evidence of that, because when kids, talk to me, when I meet parents, they're happy, they're glad that their kid is in school. I hear more positive stories than I do negative. So I think that that's also something that, we've been successful in, that Michelle and her team have been, just amazing at. And then I think one thing in particular for our, board is, we recently, with my appointment and the appointment of one of our other directors, Director Guerrero, I think we've become more representative of our student body and our families that live in the district. We have about, I think, 75% Latino population of our students. And so it's something that matters. Representation matters. And I think that our kids and our families can see that, our board is being responsive, and our district is being responsive, to representing all of our families in our district, and that we're looking out for all of our kids to be successful, and that our board reflects who we are. So I think that that's been, something that we can point to as a really good success over the last couple of years.
I'll jump in next. This is as Director Lockwood mentioned, I think we had a really positive strategic planning process with our community, where we have, I think, some really clear and focused goals for our school that are very student centered. And as part of that, our school board was really clear about what are the key indicators of success at each level: elementary, middle, and high. And they're not just test scores. It's the percentage of kids that are engaged in extracurricular activities, their perception of school climate and culture, their perception of themselves. And so really trying to take a holistic look at the school experience, knowing that joyfulness is a critical ingredient to kids being successful in school. We want joyful kids, we want joyful staff, we want joyful families. When they come into those spaces and feel that way, we know that they're going to be able to be the best version of themselves. Being asked this question, 5 or 10 years ago, I probably would have been very laser focused on the meat and potatoes of education, the curriculum, the assessment, the textbooks, the technology we're using with the curriculum, the standards. I would have been very meat and potato focused, for lack of a better analogy. And things have changed a lot with where our kids are. And we're in our district really focused on activities and athletics. We need kids engaged outside of the school day, feeling connected, feeling excited about school. Either one of us or maybe yourself were a student that you had a season of your educational journey where the reason you came to school, the reason you turned in your assignment was some activity, athletic, performing art outside of the school day that you were really excited about. And so we're really trying to be expansive in how we do that. We brought back the spelling bee last year in our elementaries. It was amazing. Our families loved it. Our kids were so excited for the spelling bee. Our local chapter of the League of Women Voters, so the Spokane chapter, they worked with our local public television to do a Civics Bowl for our high school kids and televised it and made it a big event. So it isn't just about, hey, we need more ball sports. It's the science fair. It's drama. We have some students of color in our high school. They want talent shows. And so we're trying to expand talent shows. Director Lockwood talked about our focus on inclusion. That includes unified sports, creating spaces for students with disabilities to be with their typical developing peers, to feel connected and in community. And so, it's not that the curriculum and the textbooks, it's not that they're not important and that we take our eye off of that and that we let the pendulum swing wildly one way to the other. But I think we do recognize that one of the greatest challenges of education in the 21st century will be engagement. Will kids feeling engaged and wanting to be at school? And as much as we love the science textbook, they're probably not coming to school for the science textbook. They're coming to school because they want to be in community. They want to do fun and exciting activities. They want to be involved in things. And while they're there, get them excited and spark an interest for their future in academics. So our thinking has evolved, I think, a lot pre to post pandemic in that way.
Well, I always kind of appreciate going last on a panel because everyone has said like all the really profound things, and then I just get to sweep up and say like, ditto, yes, all the things. I think what I would offer, just not to be redundant, is the way in which we've done the work in Pasco has been very student voice focused, stakeholder voice focused. So when I came on 8 years ago, I was directed by the school board to develop measurable outcomes, which most superintendents are. Superintendents go out and do that work. For me, it was really important to center student, community, employee, board voice in development of those goals. So we have 5 outrageous outcomes. They're 100% goals. And then fast forward last year, we had 4 of our board members turn over. They did not come in then now looking to change those strategic outcomes. So I think when you have hit the right grain size and the right tone around goals, people are committed to them and they will sustain leadership change. 4 board members is a lot of board members. So I think that's when you've done the work in a way that really exemplifies or aligns with the community's values, when it can sustain leadership change like that. And I think the other thing that was really important and directed by the board was for us to get narrow and deep in our focus and longer range looking. So school districts have this, they like to spin on a school year cycle. So it's like, oh, every year there's a potential for there to be a new initiative. And the board was very clear about that was not going to be our journey together, that we were going to commit to these outrageous outcomes. We needed to identify big buckets of work that we were going to commit to in a 3, 5, 7, 10 year trajectory of commitment. And it was about leading for commitment, not mandating compliance, which means that changes take longer when you're getting commitment. And the board was really generous with me around giving me time and space to be able to do that work. And so we've layered in every year kind of layers of sophistication in accountability like hugs, not accountability like hammers, and how we work together to leverage improvements up against these outcomes. So pre-COVID, 13 of my 27 schools were identified by the State Board of Education as award-winning schools in terms of growth. Certainly the pandemic disrupted that. However, in getting our state test scores this year, we made gains in almost every grade level in every content. And in some of those areas outpaced the growth in the state. So, that I think that narrower kind of deeper focus and longer range look was really wise counsel from the school board. And then allowing me the flexibility to apply my own leadership style and knowledge of the community to do that in a way that you've landed on the things that are most important to your community so that they could sustain board change. My biggest dream is that I retire from here. The likelihood that I'm going to be able to do that, I was hired at 42. So the likelihood that that's going to happen is, it's possible, but my biggest dream would be that as I leave, the whole system sustains a change in superintendent. So, I'm honored and just inspired every day to do the work and to get to partner with great people like Adam and Nikki and hear the wonderful things they're doing in Spokane is amazing too.
We knew when we invited these two school board members and two superintendents that we were going to have an awesome discussion and learn a lot, but my mind is pretty blown. And I'm also happy that my time spent on spelling bee with the New York Times Games is coming back and becoming popularized. So that's good. That's good. Time well spent. Thanks, Adam, Michelle, Nikki, and Rosa. We've got more questions than we probably have time for. So Joel and I, as we're facilitating, I'm just kind of handpicking. The next question that I think would be beneficial to hear is sort of a collaborative maybe between you teams regarding how have you gone about developing a strong school board superintendent team, and why is that so important? Michelle just mentioned something about getting 4 board members all at once. That is a huge change. And we often remind ourselves and the collective membership that we serve that if you have one new school board member or one superintendent, that's a whole new team. That's in most cases 6. You've got 5 school board members and a superintendent, and in Seattle's case, it would be 8. So that's a big undertaking, even if it's just one change. So could you share with us a little bit how you've developed strong and sustainable relationships between this team and why you feel that's so important? And I just defer to whoever wants to pop in with a response.
Rosa, do you want to start?
Sure. No, I think as you're talking, I mean, yeah, it's been pretty incredible in our district that we've been able to come together as a board, having so many new people. But I think that just speaks to not only Michelle's leadership, but I think the commitment that we share, that everyone on the board shares to do what's best for our district. And so, I mean, that's why it's important, so that we can come together and we're efficient and we're effective, as a team. But I think some of the things that have helped with that is, having, transparency with each other. Everyone on the board is, I think, very, I guess, committed to why they're on the board, and that we have shared values of why we are serving on the board. So that's really helped us come together. I think the other thing is that, we also have the ability to be, I guess, not necessarily disagree, but we can have different ways of thinking about things without tearing each other apart. And so we've been able to work together and bring our own distinct, qualities and skill set to work for the board. And I think all of us really respect that about each other. All of us bring something different to the board. And I think the other thing is that Michelle's also been really awesome at recognizing that in us, right? And so, even though she's our CEO, she's our leader, she's been really awesome to be able to come, to our board and get what she needs from us, by recognizing each of us as individuals, and also how we can work together, collectively. And so I think that that's really been, something that we can point to that. And like you said, like 4 new board members in 1 year is almost like herding cats for us sometimes, but we've managed to do it. And I think that we've become stronger in the process.
I couldn't agree more. And I think some context around why the 4 board members happened, it was on purpose. So we were an all at large school district. And there was a conscious decision made by the board prior to Rosa being appointed to go to a combination of director districts and at large positions in an effort to have our board more closely represent our community. And Rosa talked about that there's been an increase in representation. We're not quite to the percentage, but it's certainly, we're moving in that direction. So I think that's important context to have. It was a purposeful decision by the prior board, knowing that that decision may impact their ability to stay on the board. It was important enough to them that we made this move. The other thing, and I'll just add some kind of pragmatic pieces to what Rosa said. There was a very intentional effort around training. So we are a balanced governance district. We got our balanced governance consultant in right away for training. Trisha came in and did a phenomenal training that helped the board identify their shared values, which was incredible. And then, there's just all 5 of them together made a conscious decision at some point, either consciously or unconsciously, that they were going to go out this work in a way that was respectful with one another. And they are 100% committed to that. And we grapple with complex content like everyone else, and complex decisions. There's a level of listening, active listening to understand and respect that is always present in our boardroom. That's really powerful. And I think a good role model for all of us. And then, the thing I love best about my job is being able to talk to people and really figure out like, what is the thing that they're best at, or the thing that's most important to them. And then how do you kind of leverage the collective will and so that everyone sees themselves in the path forward. I love that. Of every job I've ever had, I love that part of it. And it's been really fun to get to work with this board, to get to know them as individuals, know what their strengths and passions are, and how to apply that then to the work has been pretty incredible. And like I said, there was some real pragmatic decisions made about bringing in people to help us from the outside in terms of training and consultants too. But that's only as successful as the people who are participating are willing to allow it to be. So it's been a joy and an honor to be a part of the team and truly feel like part of the team. Having new folks come in and look at the work that you've done for a number of years lends a new perspective on it. And I think is like kind of we're leveling up together, and it was the right timing for that. And so I'm really excited about the future of the work, and that they stayed the course and are allowing the prior work to level up versus kind of blowing up the system and starting over. I think puts us in a really good position to continue to yield the growth that we've seen to this point.
I can go next. I want to shout out to WASDA, because when I went to my first boot camp, I hadn't even been sworn in yet, but won the election, went to boot camp, and they talked to you about that important relationship with your superintendent, which I had gone to school board meetings almost, very regularly for 3 years. But I hadn't thought about that. So I was still learning things. And then we also had Trisha come and talk to our whole board more than once about the roles and responsibilities and our shared values. And I just think that they are such a resource to boards. And we had 3 new board members when I first got sworn in. And so not quite 4, but 3. So that's a big turnover. And I think that it was really important for us to spend that time together to, build those relationships and learn about the best way to support our students and to be public education champions. The other thing that I think we do now is we do check-ins at our meetings instead of going straight to the business. And, we review our policies and procedures around school board and superintendent roles. And so we try to reinforce that with each other. regularly. I feel like I'm sure Adam can add some things to this, but I feel like there's a lot of respect, kindness, and listening to each other. We really want to listen and hear what folks are saying. And I mean, just valuing the different perspectives. I know I have weaknesses and I have strengths. And so collectively we all bring a lot to it. So I really do value the other perspectives.
Yeah, well, as Michelle mentioned, it's always great to go last. So definitely echo all the great things that have been shared. I think one of the top things that comes to my mind is just the power of kindness. These are really dynamic, challenging, complex roles. There isn't really anything that prepares you to be a superintendent. The job you have before you're a superintendent kind of prepares you, but not really. Working with the board is just unique, and there's lots of aspects to it. And I think being a school director, there's a lot of things that are unique to that. And everything that we do orbits around relationships and kindness. And when there's a foundation of a relationship and there's kindness, you can navigate really difficult things and really hard situations, and also introduce really high expectations and accountability within the context of kindness. And it puts our staff at ease because they know our school board's always going to be kind to them. They're going to ask hard questions and they are going to expect results and outcomes, but it always comes in a context of acknowledging the effort, acknowledging the work, and then how can we get better and how can we support you in getting better, because this is where we need to go. And I think that has been a really important ingredient. And as Director Lockwood said, we have really open lines of communication. We're talking about the superintendent school board relationship all the time. And we talk about it in individual situations that come up where Director Lockwood will say, hey, this thing, came to my attention. I'm going to verbalize my role in it. And I know this is your role. And we're really overt about talking about it because it can be, sometimes it can be hard to discern where one role starts and the other one begins. So we talk about it a lot. And then I would also just echo the role of WASDA and WASA. I just think, again, there isn't a lot of things that help prepare you for these roles. And so their influence and their role is really important. And I know Tricia came in when I was a new superintendent and we were a new team, and having that outside perspective and the outside voice come in and say, here's best practice. Here's how this can really be a great partnership, I think created a really strong foundation for us versus the superintendent trying to explain to board members how this should work, or a board member trying to explain to the rest of the group. That's all good and important if there's a strong foundation. And so WASA and WASDA, I think are really key. And I would just really encourage any community where that relationship is struggling. I always really strongly encourage them to consider bringing in those two state entities to help them find their way forward and get that really good, strong, positive relationship established.
Thank you to our panelists. And just, Marissa, I'm going to echo what you said. What stellar examples right here, models for superintendents and school board members. And I'm going to give myself a pat on the back. Marissa, I'll give you a pat on the back too for selecting these folks to sit on the panel today. But outstanding, and thanks to all of you. We've got time. We want to honor the timeline here. We've got a few minutes, and there's a question that came up in the chat that I think is really a good one. And so this is the question we'll pose to each of you. The league is hosting forums for school board candidates in several local districts. What would be good questions to ask these candidates? So if each of you could think of a question that you would recommend to the league as being a good question to ask school board candidates, and let's start with let's go with Adam and Nikki and Michelle and then Rosa.
Well, I think this is going to sound very simplistic, but I think it's really important to ask potential candidates what they believe the role of a school member, what they believe the role is. And I think you can learn a lot about candidates talking about that role. I think you hear what some of their purpose is, whether they're maybe agenda driven or philosophically or ideologically driven, what they believe in terms of bringing voices to the table and sharing spaces and being a conduit for the community versus them bringing their own personal agenda and wanting to see something really specific happen. So I think it sounds simplistic, but I know as the superintendent, that's what I'm really always curious to hear of candidates is what do you think this is? Because it is very different from like being on the city council. And sometimes there's like an assumption like, oh, this is like being on the city council, or this is like being on the board for the United Way. And it's neither of those. There's some things that are similar, but it's very unique. And I think you find out a lot about candidates when you ask that question.
I will say that I think I got asked that question at a League of Women Voters forum when I was running. So I think they have that one, which is good. It's a good one. I think like what values would you bring to your role as a school board member? I think you would learn a lot about somebody hearing that. Maybe a good one.
In Pasco, we embrace a philosophy of hiring called values-based hiring. So you're really, those initial interview questions with any employee is really about their fundamental why. And you're looking for, is there a value alignment with the organization and the person? So I always love a good why question, like, why do you want to be a school board member? And, then you could couch it with how will you know you've been successful in your first year, or like what legacy would you want to leave as you're, retiring from a superintendent or from a school board position. And I think what you're really kind of trying to harvest and listen for there is their why that's values-based, just like Nikki said. And then you're looking for alignment to the organization. And because where there's values alignment, it's like, I think we've all alluded to it, if not said it on the panel, is where there's values alignment, when the work gets really hard, which it's bound to, or something tragic happens, which it's bound to, it's our common values that we fall back on that makes it easier to navigate your way through those complex times. So those are my favorite questions, regardless if I'm interviewing a kindergarten teacher or a custodian or a potential school board member. I do think we should have puppies at all interviews as well. I think if people don't like puppies, like I just can't. So that's going to be my trick I'm adding to the interview protocol. So Adam, you're welcome. Still that idea.
Yeah, and I would echo the same thing. I mean, at the end of the day, I think what makes you an effective person and on the board is your why, right? I think if you're there for the wrong reasons, you'll burn out fairly quickly if you get on the board, and it'll kind of lose its shine, right? And I think not only the why is important to get at, but I think one of the other things is to ask about like the idea of servant leadership, right? This isn't, like Michelle said, this is inherently going to get hard. This is inherently going to have tough situations. And so that takes a certain type of leadership. And I mean, I think the best way I've learned it, at least in my professional career, is that idea of servant leadership, that you are here to serve your community. You're here to serve the families and kids that are in our district. And so if you don't share that idea of what leadership means, then this may not be a good fit for you. And so I think it's also important to kind of identify those those ideas or those values of what your and I think this is probably getting as well to Adam's point, right? Like, what do you think this is about, and how do you think you can serve in that capacity? So so that's kind of a simple, I guess, answer to that. But great question. It was hard to think of something. Thanks.
Joel, do you mind if I jump in for a moment? I think one of the questions that often gets forgotten in debates is who we're here to serve, and that's students. And so asking a question like, what do you know about our students? Or what do you believe about our students? Or what do you think our students need is really important. We spend so much time focusing on adults, and bringing it back to students, I think, is really vital.
I'm looking at the time, and we could go on for another half an hour easily. I think that conversation among the panelists has been outstanding. And Marissa, I was going to mention that, are you still taking proposals for your fall school directors conference? This would be a nice group, a panel to reconvene in Bellevue. But have we passed the deadline, Marissa?
Past deadline, but there's always 2024.
There you go. Thanks for the opportunity.
Well, I'm so sorry this has to end. This has just been so enjoyable for us. I watch all of you and I see a real sense of joy about what you're doing, and how you're serving each community, and how you work as a team. It's a real lesson for, I think, all of us. And thank you for being so open with us about your feelings, your challenges, and the rewards of your job. So and thank you, Deanne, for bringing this panel together. This is it's been quite an experience for me.
Marissa, thank you so much for putting Sally Brownfield's picture up there on your opening.
Yeah.
Very nice. Thank you. She was a Shelton School Board member.
Be sure you watch that video. It's very lovely.
Yes, we certainly will. I guess we don't have any more time, so I just want to thank you once again for your time and for all the hard work you put into this presentation, and you should definitely pass it on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to Francesca for working the owl. I have to acknowledge you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yes. And for everyone out there, if there are no other, for the good of the order, if there are no other questions or comments, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Okay, very good. See you later.
Sorry.